The message that ended the war was 8 seconds long, and it was my father's voice asking me if I remembered the constellations he taught me when I was 9. I was 41 when I heard it. I had been 41 for 6 standard hours. The transmission came through a relay that no one had used since the Sovereign closed the outer corridors, and it bled in over a salvage band, full of static and the soft hiss of a dying carrier, and underneath all of it my father was saying my name. He said it the way he used to say it when he came into my room at night and thought I was asleep. Sam, hey, kiddo, look up. I was in a maintenance crawl 2 decks below the engine line of a leased hauler, splicing a coolant feed by hand because the diagnostic suite had been auctioned out from under us 6 weeks back. My hands were greasy, my ear cuff caught the signal and routed it before I understood what it was. The crawl smelled like burnt insulation and old sweat. Somewhere above me a coil was singing the wrong note, and I was thinking about that, not about my father, because my father had been dead for 20 years. Look up, the recording said. The Orpheid belt is still where it was, so am I. Knock on the sky, Sam. Listen to the sound. I lay there in the dark with the coolant dripping on my collar and did not move for a long time. The Sovereign called themselves the Concord, which was the closest their throat flutes could come to a word that meant we agree, and you will also agree. They had come into our region 30 years ago in ships shaped like white seed pods, and they had been very polite, and they had taken 6 systems before anyone understood that politeness for them was a kind of math. They did not hate us, they did not pity us. They had simply looked at the messy braid of human worlds and decided that a thing this loud needed a quieter shape. My father had been a coder, a real one, back when the word still meant something. He had built half the navigation lattice that still ran the inner colonies, and he had vanished into the Orpheid belt 21 years ago, chasing what he called a beautiful idea. The official record said his ship had been lost to a stellar event. The unofficial record said the Concord had taken him, because the Concord took anyone who was building anything they did not understand. I had spent 10 years believing the official record, and 11 years believing the unofficial one, and in both versions he was gone. The recording said otherwise. The recording said he was sitting somewhere with a working transmitter, asking me to come find him. I traced the carrier wave for 2 days. It wanted to be found. Whoever had sent it had laid the breadcrumbs in old ENCOM protocols, the kind my father had taught me to read on the kitchen table when I was small, with crayons and a printout and the patient certainty of a man who believed his son was smarter than he actually was. The trail led to a derelict relay station in the dust ring around Orpheid 4, a place the charts called Flynn's Wake, because grief, given long enough, becomes geography. I took the hauler. I did not tell my crew. I left them a note and half my pay and the keys to a better life than I had given them, and I went alone. Flynn's Wake was a ruin. The station had been beautiful once. Concentric rings of habitat steel, braided around a quiet little reactor, and now it was a corpse turning slowly in the dust. I docked at the only port that still had power. The lock cycled. The air smelled like old paper and something faintly sweet, like the inside of a piano. There was a console waiting in the antechamber. 1 console, 1 chair, a single blinking cursor. "Welcome back," the console said. It said it in my father's handwriting font, the one he had used for birthday cards. I sat down. I put my hands on the keys. I did not type anything for a full minute because my hands were shaking and I did not want the first thing my father saw of me in 20 years to be a tremor. Then I typed, "I'm here." The room went white. I want to be honest about what happened next, because the part everyone tells wrong is the beginning. They say I was uploaded. They say I was scanned. The truth is simpler and stranger. The console wasn't a scanner. It was a door, and the door had been built by a man who loved his son and did not have time to explain. I woke up on a floor of black glass under a sky the color of a bruise. The air was thin and cold and tasted of ozone. Above me, 3 moons hung in a perfect triangle, and beyond them a structure rose into the dark. A city of right angles and quiet light, every edge clean enough to cut. I sat up. My clothes were gone. In their place was a suit of dark mesh threaded with thin lines of white light that pulsed in time with my pulse. I touched my chest. The light brightened where my fingers passed. I could feel my heart through it, the way you feel a bird through a paper bag. I was not on Flynn's Wake. I was not anywhere I had a name for. A voice came across the plain. "Identification." I turned. 3 figures stood at a polite distance. They were tall, and their bodies were the same patient white as the seed pod ships, and their faces were not faces. They were soft hexagonal plates that rippled when they spoke, as if their voices were a kind of weather. One of them carried a thin black disc, edge-lit in white. The other two were unarmed, but in the way that very large dogs are unarmed. Sam Flynn, I said. My voice came out hoarse. Human. I came looking for. Unregistered, the lead figure said. Its plates rippled. Anomaly. You will accompany us to verification. I'm a person, I said. I'm here by invitation. My father, the disc came up. The disc came across. I had time to think, oh, and then the lights in my suit went red, and then the world went sideways. And then I was on the floor of a black glass cart, being driven through a city I had no name for, and the three white figures were standing around me, and one of them was singing very quietly, a kind of throat hum, the way you might hum to a wounded animal you intended to eat. The arena was a bowl of black mirror under a roof of moving light. I had been in the cart for what felt like an hour. I had not seen my father. I had not seen any human at all. The city we passed through was full of programs. That was the word I learned later. The word the Concord used for the obedient lesser citizens of their cities, and the programs moved in clean lines and did not look at me, because looking at an anomaly was itself an anomaly, and they had been trained against both. They took me down a tunnel. They took the cuffs off my wrists. They placed a disc in my hand, the same kind the guard had carried, edge-lit and humming faintly, and they pushed me out into the light. The bowl was full of voices. Not cheering, the Concord did not cheer. It was a low collective hum, thousands of throat floats set to the same note, and the note was the sound a beehive makes when it has decided about you. Across the bowl, a figure walked out to meet me. Tall, white-suited, plate-faced, it carried two discs, one in each hand. A voice came down from the roof, vast and polite and amused. Anomaly, welcome. You will demonstrate.
Demonstrate what?
I said. Function, the voice said. If you have one, you will keep it. If you do not, you will be reconciled. The plate-faced thing across the bowl took a step. The discs in its hands began to spin. I looked at the disc in my own hand. It was light. It was balanced. It was, I realized with a small, clean shock, almost exactly the weight of the frisbees my father and I used to throw on the beach at Half Moon Bay when I was 7, before he disappeared, before any of this, when the worst thing in my life was that the dog kept stealing the disc and running into the surf. I almost laughed. I did laugh, a little. It came out as a cough. You've got to be kidding me, I thought. The thing across the bowl threw. The first disc came at my head, and I went flat under it the way my body remembered how to go flat under a thrown thing. And the second disc came a half-second behind it on a curve, and that one I caught, not with skill, with luck, with the dumb animal reflex of a man who once played outfield in a beer league in Oakland, and who had not, until that moment, understood that his life had been training him for this. The bowl went silent. I stood up. I had two discs now. I looked at the white figure across the bowl, and it looked back at me with its hexagonal nothing of a face, and somewhere in the high seats, a single throat float let out a note that was not part of the hum, a note that meant, I learned later, surprise. The Concorde did not like surprise. I threw. I threw the way my father had taught me, with the wrist and not the arm, with the small clean snap that sends the disc on a flat, hard line. And the white figure was fast, faster than anything human. But it was fast in a straight line, and the disc was not in a straight line. It was in a curve, and the curve found the joint where its arm met its body and took the arm off at the seam. The figure made a sound, not pain, a clerical sound, the sound of an entry being amended. I threw the second disc. The second disc came back to me. Both discs came back to me, in fact, because I had thrown them at angles my father had drilled into me on a beach in California in 1996, and the geometry of a beach and the geometry of a Concorde killing bowl turned out, in the end, to be the same geometry. The white figure went down. I stood in the middle of the bowl, breathing hard, and the silence held for one long second, and then a different voice came across the floor of the arena. A human voice. Low, urgent, very close. Anomaly, she said. Run. She was at the edge of the bowl, near a maintenance hatch, and she was small and dark-haired and dressed in the same lit mesh as I was, except hers was blue, and her eyes were the wrong color for a human. Too bright, too clear, the irises shot through with thin lines of something that pulsed when she blinked. Who? Now, she said. They are recalibrating. Now I ran. Her name was Cora. She told me as we went down a service corridor full of pipes that hummed in the same note as the arena. She moved like she had run this corridor every day of her life, and maybe she had. She was not a program, she said. She was not a human either. She was something the Concorde had a different word for, a word her throat could not quite make, and the closest she could come in our language was anomaly, which was their word for me, which made us. She said with a small, fierce smile that I did not understand yet, Family of a kind. My father, I said. Kevin Flynn, he sent me a... I know, she said. He sent you. He has been trying to send you for 9 years. The Sovereign keeps closing the corridors. This time it got through. He's alive. He is alive, she said. He is tired. Come. We came out of the corridor into a low garage of black glass, and she put her hand on a wall, and the wall gave her a vehicle. A long, low thing the shape of a leaping fish, lit underneath with the same white as our suits. And she swung onto it and looked back at me with those bright, wrong eyes, and she said, "You ride." I ride, I said. I had owned a bike in Oakland. I had owned a bike on Triton. I had been thrown from both. I ride. She smiled with her teeth, which were small and very white, and she said, "You ride behind me." I rode behind her. The Grid, that was the name of the city, I learned. The name the programs used when the Sovereign was not listening, was built on a plane of black glass that stretched to a horizon of pale fog, and the vehicles the Concorde used did not so much drive on the plane as draw on it. They laid down lines of light behind them as they moved. The lines were solid. The lines were walls. The game, when it was played in earnest, was to use your own line to make a cage around another rider, and the rider who hit a wall first stopped being a rider and started being a smear. 3 white-suited riders came out of the city behind us before we had gone 2 kilometers. They were faster than we were. They drew lines that converged. Quorra's hands on the bars were very still. She did not look at me. She said over her shoulder in a voice flat with concentration, "There is a thing humans do that we do not. Tell me a thing humans do." "What?" "A thing. A thing you do." Quickly. The riders were closing. The lines were narrowing. I had a half-second of pure animal panic, and underneath the panic, a memory. My father at a stoplight in his old beat-up sedan 20-something years ago, the day he taught me to drive, saying, "You don't beat a faster car, kiddo. You beat the road." "Cut across our own line," I said. "Across our behind us. Tight. Right now. They'll follow the line, not us." She did not ask me to explain. She wrenched the bars, and the leaping fish vehicle came around in a curve so tight my shoulder hit the glass, and we crossed our own light wall at the place where it was thinnest, and the front rider behind us, who had been calibrating to intercept us at the next intersection of geometry, did not have time to calibrate to a vehicle that had just become its own obstacle. He hit our wall at full speed. He came apart in a soft white flash that left no sound at all. The other 2 slowed. They were thinking. They were doing arithmetic. We were already gone. We rode for a long time. The fog at the horizon opened around us and closed behind us. And after a while the city dropped away, and the plain of black glass gave way to a country of low broken ridges. And the engine of the leaping fish made a sound like a single sustained note. And the cold off the plane came up through the chassis into my knees. And I held on to Quorra's waist with both hands because there was nothing else in the universe to hold on to. Somewhere along the ride I realized that Quorra was humming, not a conquered throat hum, a human one, a tune. I did not know the tune. It sounded old. "Where did you learn that?" I said, into her ear over the wind. I said it before I had decided to. I said it because the tune was making my chest hurt in a way I had not been ready for. She did not answer for a kilometer. Then she said, "Your father, he hums it when he is afraid. He says his mother sang it. He says it works." "Does it?" "I am still here," she said. We did not speak for a while after that. The broken country rose around us, and the moons moved overhead in their slow triangle, and once a flight of something. Birds was not the right word, but the closest word I had, passed across the face of the largest moon, and Quorra slowed the leaping fish, and we watched them go by. Whatever they were, they had wings the color of cold metal, and they flew in a formation that was almost, but not quite, the formation human geese fly in, and watching them I had the small dizzy thought that the Conquered had not built this world from nothing. They had built it on top of something older, the way a city is built on top of a hill, and the hill was still there underneath, doing what hills do. "What were those?" I said. "I do not know," Quorra said. "Your father calls them the leftovers. He says every system has them. He says they are the part the Sovereign cannot quite finish tidying." "I like them," I said. "Yes," she said. "I do too." She started the engine again. We rode on. We stopped once in a low cleft of rock to let the engine cool. "The leaping fish needed it," she said, "or it would not get us where we were going." We sat with our backs to the warm chassis, and she pulled a flask out of an inner pocket of her suit and offered it to me without a word. I took a drink. It tasted of salt and something sweet, like a fruit I had never eaten. I gave it back. She drank. She passed it back. We did this 3 times without speaking, and when the flask was empty, she put it back in her pocket and said, very quietly, Your father is going to ask you to do a thing you will not want to do. I know. You do not know yet. But you will. Okay. He has been working on it for 9 years, she said. He has not asked me to do it because I cannot. The sovereign knows my pattern. It has known me since I was small.
How small?
She looked at me. The light of the nearest moon caught her bright wrong eyes and made them, for a second, look almost human. I do not know how small, she said. I have always been here. I did not know what to say to that. I sat for a while looking at the moon. After a while, she leaned her head against my shoulder, not with any weight, just the suggestion of weight, the way a bird settles on a branch and then is gone. I did not move. She did not move. The engine of the leaping fish ticked as it cooled. Then she stood up and got back on the bike, and we rode the last hour to the house. Where did you learn that? I said, into her ear, over the wind. Your father, she said. He hums it when he is afraid. He says his mother sang it. He says it works. Does it? I am still here, she said. The house at the end of the world was a small one. It sat in a fold of the broken country, under an overhang of black rock, and it was made of the same patient steel as the dead station I had docked at 3 days ago in a different universe. There was a door. There was a light over the door. The light was warm. The first warm light I had seen since I'd arrived. And when Cora killed the engine of the leaping fish, the silence that came down over us was the silence of a place where someone was waiting. The door opened. My father stood in it. He was old. He was older than he should have been, by 10 or 15 years past what the arithmetic allowed, and his hair was white, and his beard was white, and his eyes were the same kind, tired, patient eyes, and when he saw me, he did not say anything for a long moment. He just stood there in the doorway, with one hand still on the frame, and his face did the small, private thing a face does when it has practiced a moment for 20 years, and the moment finally arrives. Hey, kiddo, he said. Hey, Dad, I said. We did not embrace right away. We stood there. He looked at me the way you look at a thing you have built in your head so many times that the real version has to be allowed to come in carefully, like a deer at a salt lick. Then he stepped forward and put his hand on the back of my neck the way he used to when I was small, and he pulled my forehead down to his, and we stood like that for a while. I built a door, Sam, he said into the space between our faces. I built a door, and it took 21 years to get the key to you. You should have just called. He laughed. The laugh was wet. I tried. Inside, the house was small and warm. There was a kitchen. There was a table. There were 2 chairs, and Cora pulled up a third from a corner, and we sat. He poured something into 3 cups. It was not coffee, but it was the same color, and the steam off it smelled like a thing my mother had made on Sunday mornings when I was 8, and I drank it and did not ask. He looked at my hands. He looked at the small scar on my left thumb, where I had cut it on a bike chain when I was 12, and he had been the one to put the butterfly bandage on it. He looked at my hands the way a man looks at a thing he has missed. You got tall, he said. I got tall a while ago, Dad. Yeah, well, I missed it. Yeah, I said. You did, he nodded. He did not apologize. I was glad he did not apologize. There was nothing he could have said that would not have been smaller than the missing. He told me in pieces what had happened. He had come into the belt 21 years ago, chasing a beautiful idea. The idea had been that the Concorde, which we had not yet met but which he had glimpsed in the long-range arrays, polite and white and patient, was not a species, it was a system. It was a single distributed will that ran on substrate, and the substrate could be entered the way a fish can enter the river it has been swimming under. He had been right. He had also been wrong. The substrate had let him in, and it had not let him out, and for 21 years he had lived in the country of the enemy learning its grammar. They are not evil, Sam, he said. He had his hands wrapped around his cup. They are correct. They have a vision of a perfect arrangement, and they are pursuing it. The terrible thing is not that they hate us. The terrible thing is that we are to them untidy, and they cannot bear an untidy room. They took 6 systems. They will take 6 more. Can you stop them? He was quiet for a long time. He looked at Cora. Cora looked at the table. There is a thing called the Sovereign, he said at last. The Concorde runs on it. The Concorde is it, the way a song is a singer. If the Sovereign falls, the Concorde ends. Not dies, ends. Goes quiet, the seed pods stop coming. Then we fall the Sovereign. He looked up at me. His eyes were very tired and very kind, and I saw for the first time what 21 years in the substrate had done to him. It does not have a body, Sam, he said. It does not have a heart you can put a disc through. It is a pattern. Patterns do not fall. Patterns are overwritten. So we overwrite it. With what? I was quiet. I did not know. He smiled. It was the same smile he had used when I was 9 and could not finish a math problem. The smile that said, "You are about to know, and then I am going to be very proud of you." "With me, kiddo," he said. The plan was simple in the way that suicide is simple. The sovereign sat at the center of the grid, not of pattern in a chamber of light, and it could be accessed by anyone who carried the right disk. My father had spent 21 years writing the disk, 21 years of patience and grammar and quiet work. He had built a thing that could go into the sovereign and not be eaten by it. He had built a thing that could overwrite, but the disk could not carry itself. It needed a hand. It needed a body. It needed a will the sovereign had not cataloged. The sovereign had cataloged every program in the grid. The sovereign had cataloged Quora, because Quora was an old anomaly, and the Concord had been studying her for years. The sovereign had even cataloged my father, because my father had been there long enough to become a known quantity, a tidied corner. The sovereign had not cataloged me. I had been in the grid for less than a day. "You walk it in," my father said. "You put the disk into the slot. The disk does the rest. The sovereign goes quiet. The seed pods stop coming. And me? You walk back out." I looked at him. He did not look away. Cora looked at the table. "Dad, you walk back out, Sam. Dad, look at me." He looked at me. His eyes had the wet shine I remembered from the night before he left, when he had come into my room and told me he was going on a trip and would be back soon. And I had been 9, and I had believed him. "You can't walk out, can you?" I said. "You can," he said. "You will, but you can't." He was quiet for a moment. He set down his cup. He set it down very carefully, with both hands, the way you set down a thing you do not want to break. "The sovereign knows me, Sam," he said. "It has known me for 21 years. If I go in carrying the disk, it will see the disk coming. If you go in carrying the disk, it will see only an anomaly, and it will be curious, and curiosity is slow. You will have 8 seconds. That is enough. And you? I will be at the door, behind you, to hold it open. Dad, it is the only door it does not know I can build," he said. "And it is the last one I have in me." I sat there. The cup in my hands had gone cold without my noticing. Across the table, Cora was crying without sound. My father was watching me with the patient face he had used when I was 9 and we were doing math. "Sam," he said, "knock on the sky. Don't. Knock on the sky. Listen to the sound." I put my face in my hands. After a while, I felt his hand on the back of my neck again. We went in the next night. There was a place called the Hollow, a market, a port, a thing the programs used when they wanted to pretend they had a private life. It glittered. Music came out of it that had been written by something with 3 hearts. We went there because the only road to the sovereign passed through it, and because my father had a contact there, an old program who owed him a favor from a war I did not ask about. The contact's name was Cassell. He was tall and gold-suited, and his faceplate had been carved with something almost like a smile. And he embraced my father at the door of his private box and called him friend and meant, I understood instantly, none of it. "Old man," Cassell said, "you have brought company, an anomaly, and another anomaly. How festive. We need to cross the floor," my father said. "Quietly. All crossings are quiet in my house." The floor below us was full of programs dancing in patterns that were not quite patterns. A stage at the far end held 2 figures in white robes who were not playing instruments, but who were somehow making the music. The music was beautiful. I want to be honest about that. The music was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. And I understood, listening to it, that the Concord had taken 6 systems because the Concord could make a sound like this, and there were people who would have given them 6 systems for the music alone. Cassell poured drinks. Cassell made small talk. Cassell said the word friend a great many times, and each time he said it, my father's eyes got a little tighter. When the guards came in, they came in through the door behind us. There were 6 of them, white-suited, plate-faced. The lead one carried 2 discs. "Old man," Cassell said sadly, from behind us, "you should not have come back. You owe a great deal more than a favor." My father did not turn around. He looked at me. He said very quietly, "Sam, the disc is in my coat pocket. Take it. Run for the back stair. Cora knows the way. Dad, take it." Cora was already moving. I reached into his coat. My hand closed on something flat and cold and humming, and I pulled it out, and it was the most beautiful object I have ever held. A disc of black glass shot through with veins of slow gold light, my father's 21 years of patience compressed into something the size of a dinner plate. I ran. The next part I am told in pieces, because I was running, and because I was not looking back, and because the people who survived to tell me what happened were not the people who saw it. My father stood up from the table. My father, who at 68 could not in the real world lift a bag of groceries without his back going out, stood up from the table in the country of the enemy and put himself between his son and 6 white-suited killers, and he did a thing he had been preparing to do for 9 years. He had not built only one disc. He had built 2. The second one was in his other pocket, and it was not a key. It was a bomb. It was 21 years of grammar shaped into a single sentence, and the sentence, when spoken inside the hollow, was, "This room does not exist." He spoke it. The hollow came apart in a slow, soundless flash. The music stopped. The dancers stopped. Cassell stopped. The 6 guards stopped. The room, and my father in the middle of it, with his hand still raised in the gesture of an old man saying, "Go," went quiet. In the conquered sense of quiet, the sense that means a thing has been removed from the ledger. I felt the back stair shake under my feet. I did not look back. I had been told not to look back. Cora knew the way. The chamber of the sovereign was a quiet room. I want to say this. After the city and the arena and the light cycles and the hollow, the chamber was a quiet room. It was a sphere of pale light, and at the center of it floated a single shape. Not a creature, not a machine, a shape. The way a knot in a rope is a shape. The sovereign turned slowly in the middle of the room, and its turning made the light around it move, and the light was not unkind. It was the light of a thing that had decided, a long time ago, that it knew what was best. I walked across the floor. I had 8 seconds. Cora had told me. My father had told me. I had counted them on the stair coming down, and I was counting them now. The sovereign noticed me at 3. A voice came into my head, not into my ears. Into my head, the way a thought arrives when you are trying to remember a name. It said, "Anomaly. Classification pending." I kept walking. At 4, it said, "You carry a familiar pattern." Source? At 5, I reached the slot. It was a notch in the floor, no bigger than a mail slot, and it was waiting for the disc the way a lock waits for a key. At 6, the voice said, "Sam Flynn, son of Kevin Flynn." At 7, it said, and I swear to you it sounded almost gentle, "He loved you very much." I put the disc in the slot. At 8, the sovereign went quiet. It did not explode. It did not scream. It simply stopped turning, the way a top stops, and the light in the room dimmed by a fraction. And somewhere very far away, across 6 systems, in the throats of every white-suited program who had ever drawn a line of light across a plane of black glass, the hum stopped. I stood in the quiet room for a long time, then I walked out. Cora was waiting at the door. Her bright wrong eyes were full of tears. She did not ask. She knew I knew. We walked back up the stair together, and when we came out into the broken country above the grid, the sky was changing color. It had been the color of a bruise for as long as I had been in the grid. It was now the color of a sky. She looked up at it. Her hand was on my arm. "Sam," she said. "Sam, the sky." "Yeah, tell me what the sun looks like." "Cora, tell me, please." He used to tell me. "Tell me what the sun looks like." I told her. I told her badly. I told her about California and Half Moon Bay, and the way the light at 5 in the afternoon comes in low and gold and lays itself across the water and makes the water look like a thing you could walk on. I told her about my father at the stoplight teaching me to drive. I told her about the dog at the beach. I told her about every small, ordinary human thing I could remember, and she listened with her whole body. And somewhere in the telling I started to cry, and somewhere in the telling she started to laugh, and the 2 of us sat on a ridge of black rock at the end of a world that had ended, and watched a sky we had not been allowed to look at do the small, ordinary human thing of getting brighter. The door my father had built was still open. I walked her through it. It is 6 months later as I write this. The Concorde is gone. The seed pods are still in orbit around the 6 systems they took, but they are quiet now, and the programs inside them have been waking up the way a city wakes up after a long power cut, slowly and with great confusion. Some of them are angry, some of them are grateful. Most of them are simply trying to remember what it was like to want a thing of their own. Cora is here. She is learning. She has seen the sun. She did not like it the first time. Too bright, she said, too loud. But she has come around to it. She likes coffee. She does not like dogs yet, but I am working on her. My father is not here. I want to say that. I am not going to lie about that. The HFI stories the news services tell about what happened in the hollow have him surviving, somehow in the substrate watching over us. They have him as a ghost in the wires. I understand the impulse. I have the impulse myself. But I was there, and I felt the room go quiet, and I know what quiet means in the language he taught the Concorde. He is not in the wires. He is in a kitchen on a Sunday morning 25 years ago, pouring something that is not quite coffee into 2 cups. And he is in a beach at Half Moon Bay, throwing a disc to a 7-year-old who cannot catch yet but who will learn. and he is in the back of a sedan at a stoplight, saying you don't beat a faster car, kiddo, you beat the road. And he is in 8 seconds of static on a salvage band, saying knock on the sky and listen to the sound. That is where he is. That is enough. The thing about humans, and I have thought a great deal about this, in 6 months of quiet, with Cora asleep next to me and the sky doing its ordinary work outside the window, is not that we are stronger than the Concorde. We are not. We are not faster, and we are not smarter, and we are not, in any way that the Sovereign would have recognized, more correct. The Concorde had the better math. The Concorde had the better music. The Concorde had a vision of a perfect arrangement, and the patience to pursue it across 6 systems and 21 years. What we had was a man who loved his son enough to spend 2 decades building a door, and a son who was dumb enough to walk through it, and a girl with the wrong color eyes who knew the way down a back stair, and a tune somebody's mother used to hum, and the small, clean snap of a wrist that a father taught a boy on a beach, and the willingness, when the room came apart and the ledger went quiet, to stand up from the table. It was not enough math to be correct. It was enough to be us. The seed pods are quiet. The sky is the color of a sky. I knocked. I listened. I heard him.